talking about straining for that logo on the side of your helmet and not the name on your back.
Yes, sir.
Because we know what it represents. It represents everybody here you see and everybody you can't that we've talked about. I'm here to strain with you, man. I swear to God, I'm here to strain with you. Let's go. Everything you got, strain with everything you got. Let's go. Bills on 3. 1, 2, 3. Bills.
You're listening to the Off Tackle with John Fina show with your host, Joe Miller. Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into the Off Tackle with John Fina show, brought to you by Ficta, Endel, and Elmer Eye Care on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. My name is Joe Miller, also called The Voice at times. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired, and that guy right over there is the one, the only, maybe not in the world, but the one for this show, John Fina. John, how are you?
Victory Monday. The only reason I didn't wear the shirt is I think I left it in the laundry. You know, not that I haven't ever went laundry diving to pull out a shirt. Today would be the day.
So many Victory Mondays that it's just dirty all the time.
God, wouldn't it be great to have 17 of them for the regular season?
For Josh Allen's number.
That's right. And I always have to decide, like, what shirt am I going to wear on the show? So I brought this one out. I dig these 47 shirts. They're so deluxe.
They're comfortable. Yeah, we would pimp and talk about the HO Edge type shirt thing, but they don't sponsor us. So they sponsor everybody on the planet but us. I tried to get us a sponsorship last year, and they're like, we already sponsor people on your network. It's like, all right.
Oh, I didn't even hear it. You glitched. So whoever it was.
I didn't say it out loud. But welcome everybody into the show. So good to have every single one of you here on the Off Tackle with John Fina show. Welcome to everybody who is jumping into the comment section. This is a podcast, a recording of a podcast. And if you want to get John's attention, please do us a favor, or ask him a question. Please do us a favor. Please super chat us, and we will read your question on the air. Please like, subscribe, whatever platform you are watching this live on now, or if you're listening to it in podcast form on Victory Tuesday, or Victory Wednesday, or Victory Thursday, Victory Friday, even maybe. If you get squirrely, please like, please subscribe, as John's making fun of me, and I don't really care because it was a good football game, and we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. 2 weeks in a row where we're not going to have a whole lot of stuff to talk about that needs work. But before we get started, we should probably hear from our show sponsor. Yes,
I agree. Let's hear.
Let's hear. And brought to you by yours truly, Joe Miller. Nothing builds the thrill quite like seeing our Buffalo Bills march right down the field. Every pass, every play, and every touchdown. But for those of us who have to catch the action blurry, it's time to call Ficta, Endel, and Elmer Eye Care and schedule a consultation. With Zeiss Smile technology, you can have your vision corrected in moments so you can get back to focusing on what's important. It's a quick, pain-free procedure with a world-class team, and you're back in the action. Visit us online at ficta.com and take our free self-evaluation test to see if you are eligible and schedule a consultation. Because here in Buffalo, we don't just watch the game, we live it. Ficta, Endel, and Elmer Eye Care. We are focused on you. Focused on you.
You are the voice. Oh my God. Like, I'm going to run to Ficta, Endel, and Elmer and get my eyes done because Joe Miller is just like, it's so soothing.
Butter.
It's going to be like butter.
Like just like the procedure, my voice is butter. Yeah, or vice versa. No, that ain't right. My voice is butter, just like the procedure. Isn't that how that should go? It should be that
I don't know.
Right,
I stopped listening a while ago.
It's so good to have you. So first things first. I know you said you watched my show or listened to my show this morning, the Overreaction Sports Show.
I did. While I was working.
Yeah, background noise. It's super thankful. But what is your take before we get to the Buffalo Bills stuff? And it's relevant because Miami's coming to Buffalo this week. What is your take on 70 points? You heard mine today. If you caught it, if you weren't on a call or in the middle of something. But what's your take on scoring 70 points in an NFL game? Where are you at on that?
Well, it's hard to believe that Denver was that bad that Miami wasn't really trying, right? So if you're leaving them out there, I got to think you're trying to work on something that you want to implement in the weeks to come,
Mm-hmm.
and just see how it looks on film. And there's no better way than against a live defense. So that's one possibility. Number two, I don't know, maybe you're just trying to pump egos and get everybody feeling pretty good. Denver just isn't very good either. So they're all grown men. What the hell? 70, 80, 90? What difference does it make?
I think where I was going with that question is, for me, it's more an indictment on the Broncos than it is a celebration of the Dolphins. I don't think for 1 second that it's like, oh my God, the Dolphins are unbelievable. I think it's more of even the Dolphins players said it, that the Broncos were running for the bus a third of the way through the third quarter. Like they were they were done.
Yeah.
They had
There was a lot of uncle being played out there. So I'll say this. I mean, they're pretty bad. It's kind of hard to try not to score,
right.
So it's just a function of who should come out of the game and when.
Right.
And if you're leaving guys in that should be out of the game, then you might want to be rethinking your coaching. Like why wouldn't you want to rest a guy who's had some pretty significant health issues in the past?
I know that I believe the starters came out at some point, probably during the fourth quarter. But we're right there. I mean, the Buffalo Bills will leave Josh Allen in longer than, they took him out in yesterday's football game, which they normally do not do. And I think I tweeted Josh Allen's been benched or something like that. But there's been many times I'm going to say and when I say I collectively mean you and me and we, all of Bills Mafia, have been like, the Bills are up by 4 scores. Why is Josh Allen in the football game? What is happening right now? Right.
Yeah, to me, it's all about what can you work on.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
That's the only reason to leave somebody in. And frankly, looking at yesterday's game, I kind of got through part of the first quarter before our call here, and there were things that I looked at and said, that play would have been good in the fourth quarter. Let's get that one again, because there's a lot of things that are timing issues. Everybody hates that draw. But, Deion's got to have a little bit better understanding when to stay on the guy. We had a couple of breakdowns and some other running plays. And, those are good times to work on that stuff.
Well, we're not into it yet, but if we're going to get into it, what in the world in the first series was that weird handoff to Gabe Davis, and why run that play? Fire that play into the sun.
Well, that's not a bad play. I mean, Mitch Morse just made a really poor block. I mean, if Mitch blocks his guy, maybe it goes
not to call anybody out, but
no, I mean, he's a great football player. I'm not saying cut the guy.
I'm teasing you.
We get enough of that around here, right? Like, fire everybody. They're going to be out there with like you and me and John Hammer and Mr. Diggs playing football. Like,
super true.
It's going to be a problem. And so that's an interesting question, right? So why the hell run that play? Everybody runs that play.
The one to Gabe Davis?
Yeah, that sort of
he came from the slot and and got 2 steps in. He wasn't normally a jet sweep or a wide receiver sweep. He's screaming across the front of the line.
It doesn't matter if it's short or long motion across the formation. Okay. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, you might want to run it with long motion, because then you maybe create some who follows, who picks him up kind of issues.
Yeah.
But none of it works if you don't block the right people. That's like
so you, a former starting left tackle in the NFL, are of the opinion that blocking matters. Is that what you're trying to tell me right now? Blocking matters
only on Sunday.
Only on Sunday. Super good. Well, let's get into this thing here, because we're already having some fun, which is great, and I love talking football.
Oh my God, it's great to win, right? You get like, we're having a great time.
It's always great to win.
Even all the crappy stuff seems less crappy.
The crappy stuff is easier to create content around, and is easier to talk about, because like it's just right there in front of you. This sucked, that sucked, he sucked, fire this guy, fire that guy. When they play well, it's like, we won. Yeah.
So I guess the show's over. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Exactly. See you next week. Anyway,
I got stuff to do.
So why don't you give me your overall arching, whatever. What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts on this football game, John?
Well, I think there's the obvious things, right? But if you try to dig a little bit deeper, and I've heard some takes on this before, what a game for Tre'Davious White. Not the pick, right? But where was that the last game? Who can remember?
No, he
but
had an interception this game. Yep.
That's right.
In
Yeah,
the end zone.
and it was a beauty, by the way.
And he was down in the end zone.
Yes.
I don't care what anybody says. That should have been a touchback. Go ahead.
Well, regardless. But his coverage was terrific. I mean, there was a nice completion on his side, but his coverage was there. Sometimes perfectly placed ball and a good route. You can't beat it. You can only get so close. So I love the fact that it's a confidence booster for him. And I don't think the Washington receivers are substandard. I don't think they're elite.
Terry McLaurin's elite. McLaurin's elite. Yeah.
Yeah, he's elite. So that to me was terrific. I love seeing back-to-back breakout games with Bernard, which, I didn't pull a Joe Miller. I pumped the brakes. I'm always a wait and see kind of guy. It's just my nature. It looks like he's really getting his sea legs out there, which is terrific. I thought one thing I looked at was, and I looked at it through the prism of the upcoming game. There was a play where Christian Benford should have, in press coverage, gotten long and got his hands on the receiver before he bailed. And I'm just thinking to myself, next week, if we're in press and you're on the line of scrimmage, you've got to get long. You got to get the stop in the name of love hands out there. And you got to get the guy to deviate, right? We talk about this in offensive line play. You got to get a guy when he's stepping forward to step over his foot a little bit. You got to take him off his course. And then I think he did end up getting a little tug penalty, but I would take that, over a guy running free. So I think Benford played okay. Everybody on the defense looked pretty good. I was trying to focus a little bit more on the front four, and the push was awesome in this game. I mean, just the overall setting the line of scrimmage on their side of the ball. Now, that doesn't mean we stop every run. It doesn't mean we make every sack, but almost.
9.
But I really like the aggressive nature of it. And I have to think that somewhere ringing in Epinesa and Rousseau's ears is the name Leonard. This guy looks pretty good. And he had that unbelievable dip and corner rush for the sack.
And he's a tall and lanky dude too.
God.
Yeah.
So again, the play of Leonard Floyd through the lens of Rousseau and Epinesa is like, I need to take more chances. I need to develop my technique better, because you don't see Floyd use that rush every play. And I'll tell you, I'd like to see it a lot more, because he was about 6 inches off the ground and made about a 45-degree turn right under the tackle's hands. And watching it live, I was, for some reason, focused on it. I was like, that's a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
Put that in the museum right down the street from RFK or whatever the hell the stadium's called now.
Put it in the Louvre.
Well, I was thinking of the Smithsonian, since the Louvre is across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's a Bills Mafia joke.
Oh, okay.
By the way, Pamela, I got your joke 9 times. 9.
Okay. Anyway, so
come on, you know what that is. 9 times.
9 times. No, I don't.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think that's the first pop culture reference that you and I have not been on the same page on. But anyway.
I'll do better. I promise to do better.
Somebody get me Jerry Ostrowski in here.
Milano did great. Bernard did great. I thought the safeties looked pretty good. The hard part to swallow and digest as a fan, and even I get a little wrapped up in it every now and again, when a run that should go for 4 yards goes for 7, or a run that is 10 yards goes for 18, and you just you want every run to go for 0. And I get that. I'm in that same camp. But I also understand that on the continuum of a game, there's ebb and flow, and they're going to get theirs. You just got to get more than they get, so you get the game. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my takes on defense. Sorry, it was long-winded.
No, you're good.
Offensively, I struggle a little bit with the situational play calling. I don't dislike the plays. I just wonder why on 1st and 2nd and 10, when we're having good success, Josh is having great patience, the protection is sound, why we're not throwing for 5 yards or 7. I don't get it.
Why is it 4th and inches and we're dropping shotgun and dropping back to pass, right?
Yeah, I'm all right with that one.
Really? Because McDermott after the play was like shaking his head no. And then I think it was Rivera, Jack Del Rio was like, what was that? Like,
yeah, I mean, at the time, it's like a coin flip, though. If he completes it and you get the first down, you're like, oh wow, we did the unexpected. Look at us. But look, I was watching a couple of games last night. And it was 4th and 1, and it ended up being -2 yards on a running play. So hindsight is really good. I love it. I use it as often as possible, but that one I didn't mind as much. But what I'm trying to get my head around some of Dorsey's calls in these situations that look like they should be passed and we're running it or passing when we should be running it. And I don't know. I do like that there are a couple of new plays this year in the run game that they need to continue to rep and get better at and really work on the timing. Bruno Fina, you kind of look like Ed Rooney a little bit.
I don't know if he's talking to me or what. I definitely don't look like that guy, but
you look more like Rooney than I do.
No, you look just like the guy. But I'm just talking about the fact that your son is in the room, your daughter is in the room, my sister, my mom. This is a family. We should just make this a family conference call and get it over with.
Hey, isn't Bill's Mafia family? Doesn't that mean everybody?
Yes, it is. It is absolutely 100% me familia.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruno.
So yeah, it's good to see your family in here. Nice.
Well, with your bad knee, Joe, you shouldn't throw anyone.
Wait, what?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ed Rooney.
That's right.
Turnabout is fair play.
Yes, it was. That was perfect. Very well played. For me, this game was it's very how do I want to say it? Because it's like, for all intents and purposes, you go to games clearly to experience the game, to experience the event, to experience the environment, to do all of that stuff. Now, everybody in some shape, form, or fashion is an amalgamation of what their learned behavior is. For me, I'm a sit up in the air kind of guy, right above the game, and like to look down and see the entire field, because I just prefer to see all the players and see if it's a first down, versus standing on the sideline or standing like low down, like super close, and like staring at the Jumbotron and not really being able to see anything. I said on my show today. So actually, before I say that,
I heard that part.
Yes, I got the opportunity, and it was an amazing opportunity to sit literally row 1. I think I was on the 10-yard line. I was showing Beth today, like, there I am. Like, is it like blurry across the TV screen? You can see my 17 jersey. Yeah. I was like, that's me right there. That blurry guy right there. It was an amazing experience. I made memories and had a great time with friends that, like, I otherwise normally don't get the opportunity to make, right? It was a once in a lifetime sort of like situation opportunity. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when I watched the game, I said this on my show, this is the part, like, from where I sit, football, the NFL is a finely orchestrated ballet. When you're above it, like the motions and like what guys are doing and like the finesse, and they're not enormous monsters from where I sit. Like, you can see them and they're close. I could read the back of their jerseys and all that stuff, but they're not enormous. When you get that close to the field and you played, and you've been on
chaos.
Yes, but it's legitimate chaos with gigantic, like, barbarian warriors.
Indecipherable chaos.
Yes.
Like, there's so many moving parts unless you have the proper angle. You really, like, when you're in that situation on the sideline, for example, when you're coaching, you've really got number one, if you know the play call and you know where to look, it's going to help a lot. But being in the situation you're in, it's almost impossible.
I left my headset and my earpiece at home, so
I understand that
I wasn't getting the play calls,
and that's just bad planning, bad packing. I mean, I'll text Beth and just tell her she's got to match up your outfits like Janine does for Daryl, and make sure that you get the check. Is Joe wearing the right outfit?
But overall, the game, so that's the experience was amazing for me. But the game itself, I think where I would leave this is 2 weeks in a row. The Jets game probably too, where everybody was like, we're going to curb stomp these guys. We're going to dog walk the Commanders, just like people thought with the Raiders game. And I was very much well, let's see, right? Because not that I don't have faith in this football team, but after a couple games last year, specifically the last game that the Bills left me with against the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs, there was an aspect of like, I'm not sure what to expect. They've got good players over there on the other side of the field. They get paid too. You say it all the time. Those guys get paid.
That's right.
And then after the game, and we throttle somebody, we dog walk them or curb stomp them. It's like, I don't even know what you were worried about.
Yeah, of course.
The Cowboys yesterday got throttled by the Cardinals, who are supposedly tanking. The Cardinals are supposed to be tanking. The Cowboys got laid to waste by them.
Yeah, they're all on the plane, like looking at each other like, dude, it wasn't me, it was you. It wasn't me, it was you. So here's a funny thing in keeping with what you're talking about. My guilty pleasure is to go on LaShawn Germain's, the Warlocks, Spaces post-game and listen and lurk and just hear people. And there's some really great takes, but the entertainment level is 11. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's off the charts. So I'm like you, Joe, like cautiously optimistic, right? But
right.
I love that people talk smack and talk shit, all week long. And then the other team is talking smack, and somehow they find each other on social media and just go back and forth. And then I had just a great time listening to some of those Spaces today. And they're always like, do you want the mic? And I'm like, nope. I'm just here to lurk and listen.
I'm just here to pass the time as I work on emails.
That's right. That's incredibly entertaining. But what does always come true is there is a lot of hindsight, or there is a lot of I told you so's, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not one to pick a fight before a game. I want to fight during the game.
Right.
Which we did particularly well yesterday. And I going back to individual performances across the offensive line, I think Deion Dawkins is playing really well right now, but that doesn't mean Chase Young doesn't come underneath him on a play.
Right.
He's taken this deep square set, which I appreciate, but it's all about timing and putting on the brakes. I'm looking at the set. I'm like, great set, but he's drifting, and Chase Young's underneath him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happens to every tackle, right? A guy you got to maintain those relationships. And I'm not talking about, like you and me, or I'm talking about distance, right? So it's all about tracking a guy's movements. But by and large, he had a terrific game. McGovern and Osiris Torrance were great.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Spencer Smith do some really Brown. I saw Spencer Brown make some really nice exchanges. The tight ends I didn't think really appeared much in the game, but I mean, Diggs was on point. Gabe Davis was on point. The ball was distributed nicely. The swing passes that you and I talk about, the kind of modified run game stuff, the nice one. I particularly loved, although it didn't work out, James Cook. Right over the middle. Josh was dumping it to him, and it got batted down. But I was like, that's the kind of stuff that outlet. When Josh is going deep, when we're stretching the field, sneak that guy out, dump it over the top. We used to do it to Thurman all the time.
Yep. When you're talking about the good, and you've kind of leaned into the next topic, talk about the run game, just some of the scheme stuff you saw, the good that you saw. You kind of like tiptoed into the offensive line a little bit already, but just kind of work through a little bit just what you saw scheme-wise from this team in this football game.
Well, I thought it was a decent blend of zone and angle, if you will. Listen, this guy James Cook can make you look good.
Oh yeah.
His jump cuts a yard deep in the backfield, and his ability to get to high speed once he lands, it's really nice. I mean, slicker than snot on a doorknob, as one of my coaches would have said. So I think that's helping a lot, and that kind of confidence helps Dorsey call more runs. You can forgive a little bit, like we say, those are good football players up front for Washington, right? We talk about an embarrassment of riches all the time. And, you just can't whiff. If you can get on guys, and either if you're on half a man, 3/4, or a whole man, if you can maintain a little bit of leverage, James Cook is going to get free. And he had some really nice runs. Now, the first series of the game, the first play of the game, they should have handed the ball off, but instead we threw that swing out in space. But if you go back and look, I mean, Joe Miller and John Fina could have pinky promised our way through that hole. It was so big. I don't know if it was a design throw or it was an RPO, but it should have been a give. And then on the very next play, we just, we missed a block. And that all that stuff builds, and that scares OCs out of stuff. So it's always a work in progress. There's 5 offensive linemen. There are always going to be 5 defensive linemen, and everybody's got to get 3/4 of a man and maintain leverage. And it's easier said than done.
Yeah. The good for me in this football game is going to be the obvious, right? It's just, we opened the show a little bit. You did, talking about Terrell Bernard, and I don't know what to make of him yet. I like what I see. I've had a lot of conversations on social media back and forth, not bad back and forth, just good people asking me questions and whatever, yada, yada, just about, my thoughts. And to me, it's like, wait and see. Let's wait and see. Nobody's game planning for Terrell Bernard yet, probably until this week, right? This week is the week where it's going to be, that guy might be a problem. We might want to try to eliminate that guy a little bit.
So I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think that you're really game planning for, 4-2 linebacker. Now, you will game plan for a 3 technique, 1 technique, and an end. But you're really got a guy in space. You're not really game planning for him. I mean, your pin and pull plays are going to be the same. You're either combination blocking to the guy or you're leading on the guy. Is with respect to coverage, I don't know how maybe you try to confuse him, but I don't think you game plan for a guy off the ball like that, who's not, like a Greg Lloyd. If any of you are old enough to remember that name, who can play back in space and then walk up to the end of the line. Jason Taylor did it a lot at Miami when they ran that 3-3 and moved him around. I don't think you're going to see game planning for Bernard.
Brian Bowers, my guy, Double B, asks, why would you game plan for a first-year starting linebacker? Well, he had an interception, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery, and a bunch of tackles yesterday. So that's a guy, as much as I appreciate what you're saying, Luke Kuechly was a guy that was a linebacker, an off-the-ball linebacker in a 4-2 nickel defense ran by Sean McDermott in Carolina. And you better believe people game planned for Luke Kuechly. People are game planning for Matt Milano as well. There's an aspect. Matt Milano was pretty quiet in this football game.
Solid, not flashy, but solid.
Right, not flashy, but solid. But it wasn't the typical. It wasn't what we saw in the Jets game where he was all over the football field, right?
Yeah, but his A-gap blitz, Bernard's A-gap blitz, that's just a function of an error. It could have been Matt Milano. If Matt Milano were in that space at that moment running that same blitz, Matt Milano makes that sack as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, he might not make that interception. I don't know what his ups are like.
The good news is, to your point about him in coverage, is that, you're talking about a guy that, and we saw it, and they did a good job of highlighting it on the game film, that he didn't necessarily get lost in coverage. He didn't get fooled. He was where he was supposed to be. I think Eric Turner from Cover One showed a couple things where he was passing off receivers and tight ends to like the next guy in the zone. So there's a lot to be said for that, as far as his ability and capability there, potentially being better than the guy that he replaced, as good as Tremaine was in coverage. I mean, we all know Bernard is a converted safety, I believe, right? He's an oversized converted safety from college. So this is kind of wheelhouse work for him. Now, let's just be patient and see what happens and see where it goes. I hope he becomes the greatest linebacker. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Cornelius Bennett showed up and like the world was set on fire. It's like, oh my gosh, you're talking about a guy that would start on the right side of the offensive line, or the defensive line rather, and like get around free, the run would go the opposite direction and he would chase the running back down from behind.
Oh, I watched him at Alabama.
Crazy.
All of our games at Arizona were at night, and I'm watching, and I'm like, oh boy, I hope I never have to see that guy.
like who does
that?
It
was pretty crazy. You mentioned something in your podcast, like what happens when he gets big boyed. Jerry said that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And
Jerry did not say that about Terrell Bernard. Jerry just said that about our defense in general. Our defense has the ability to be big boyed at times.
So what addressing that specifically to a guy like Bernard is, being a little bit undersized. To me, all you need to do, well, not all you need to do, but if I'm an offensive lineman and I'm playing against Ted Johnson, who's going to come up, I mean, I am getting stout and sitting down. But a guy like Bernard, I'm looking more for avoiding a guy that's going to avoid contact and be a little bit more shifty. But honestly, I'm watching him on first and 10 and more obvious running downs. Mm-hmm. And he's coming up in there and he's coming up and he's getting long and he's taking on offensive linemen. And it's not, as you know, and we've seen it, it's not so much that you destroy a guy and make a tackle right there. But if you have a gap and an offensive lineman is coming at me and I need to be in the C gap, then I need to get there. What happens is when your responsibility is the C gap and then you take the inside shoulder because you're either out of position or you're lazy or path of least resistance or what have you, that's when you get gashed. And it's really big for the safeties, right? They're coming down and run support and they got to be in the proper gap. And if your linebacker doesn't take his gap and make that guy bend a little bit, that's hard sledding making those tackles.
Yeah. Buffalo Freddy says, it appears to me that Bernard is vastly ahead of what we expected in preparation and in understanding the defense. And I think this speaks to kind of where all of us were at. So I'm the only, as far as I know, content creator that has called back my own video clips of me saying there isn't a quality starting middle linebacker on this football team, like on this roster, which is why we assume they went and got Christian Kirksey, who is since retired this week. But I think that you would have expected that if Terrell Bernard was that good, was that ready, and I know what you're going to say, well, maybe he wasn't ready. There's got to be a measure of, oh, this kid's got something last year. He was inactive a lot last year. You would think that his talent would put him on the field, right?
Joe, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to think that last year they must have been looking at the cap and must have been trying to decide what to do with Edmonds and should have been thinking, let's get this guy on the field a little bit more. I could see that and get him some exposure. But they didn't. Right. Yeah. And it takes I've coached a little bit of high school, and the difference between a guy in his first game and his third game or fourth game, there's an obvious difference. And it's the speed of the game. It's the recognition. And if you believe the guy has the skills beforehand, then it's just, getting them ready to go mentally. Yeah. And then they find their place. And I agree with you. I mean, we can't say he's arrived. We can't say he's going to the Pro Bowl. But what I would like to see is that remaining consistency of, okay, I've got this guy, but I've really got this area. So if he's coming across, I need to have an understanding of who's in the flat over there. If I'm in the middle of the field, am I passing this guy off? And then am I floating back over here? And those it's easy for us to watch in slow-mo, but it happens like that on the field.
Chaos.
And it all goes back to preparation.
It all goes back to chaos. Matt Bynum, editor-in-chief of Buffalo Rumblings. This is a wonderful point. So McDermott said no one is surprised about Bernard. But then why would they have signed Kirksey if not concerned for Bernard's unknown reality? That is a wildly accurate post. If the Bills were not surprised or are not surprised, they don't go into week one going, hey, Christian, why don't you sign over here? Like, there's an aspect of them going, you know what, they even said in the presser, as soon as he's up to speed, he's going to play. He's on the practice squad right now. As soon as he's got the playbook down, he's going to dress, he's going to play. And then what happens? Bernard shows up and is playing like a man with his hair on fire, playing like Matt Milano.
Well, I appreciate the question, but what I want to know is, if you have areas on your roster that you want to bolster, and there's a guy on the street, say you're looking at linebackers, offensive line, and wide receiver, and the available guys in your price range on the street don't match, your needs specifically, you're going to take the best one for the value for that position, right? So why not sign him? I mean, that's my foil to that. The guys on the street, sign him. This is a position of need. We don't want to sign that offensive lineman because he's not as good at offensive line as Kirksey is at linebackering.
We'll never know.
Well, we'll never know, but that to me explains the thought process.
Yeah. I think there's a measure of insurance in the Kirksey signing as well. You're putting a kid on the field that was inactive most of the he couldn't even beat out the backups to get a jersey on Sunday to go in, right, in scrub time or to play special teams or whatever. You can't tell me he wasn't unknown. He didn't play in the preseason, John. He didn't play the preseason at all. They got no view of him on the football field playing in Tremaine Edmonds' spot, the glue to this defense for the last 5 years. They had no video of him at all doing that job. You can't tell me Kirksey wasn't insurance.
I'm not saying he wasn't, but my point.
I love it. It's a great conversation. I love it.
I'm not saying he wasn't insurance. Like, they didn't know. They bring a guy in. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look, they bring guys in all the time. They try to push other people
all the time,
right? All the time.
Yep.
And you could say, we believe this is the guy. We see the skills. We see what he does in the meeting rooms and his preparation. We're good with this guy. The one thing he doesn't have is experience. Shame on us for not getting him that last year. But until we know what we have, let's have some insurance.
Yeah. I loved as well.
But again, there's enough unknowns at our linebacker position that they could sign Kirksey and Miller and Fina and load it up, right?
Oh, I ain't gonna make it far.
Well,
I ain't passing the physical. I'm not passing the physical, bro. I can get 225 up a whole bunch of times, but I ain't passing that physical. It's just not happening. I also loved what I saw from Trey. You talked about Trey. Trey has done a great job this season. I mean, he's been glued to the number one wide receiver, which is not something we've necessarily seen him do. And it's worked out pretty well for the Buffalo Bills and for him. It was great to see him get a pick. The game as a whole, we could spend an hour and a half talking about the good from this football game. I loved the throw that Josh Allen made to Gabe Davis. It was a picturesque Josh Allen throw, drifting to his right, throws back across the field to the corner, like the corner of the end zone, the left side of the end zone, which is a throw that very few quarterbacks can even make. There was a lot to love and like about this football game. We're going to get to talk about what's next and our next expectations. Before we do that, let's real quick just kind of hit maybe what needs work. I don't know that I have anything necessarily. Like, for me, from where I sat and the game film that I watched, it's element. I'm not going to sit here and them, but
all right. I mean, I'll touch on that. Whatever game plan they have with the Dolphins, if it includes some press coverage, they better work their asses off this week on that.
They don't.
What?
They don't press the Dolphins.
I think you'll see a little bit of mix of it. But
did we talk about this last week, you and me? Or did I talk about it with Sturls?
It's probably Sturls. No, and I get that they don't, right? But they're gonna.
I don't get it.
Well, no, I'm not saying I get it and I'm okay with it. I'm saying that I realize they don't do it.
Look at yesterday's Dolphins game. I know the very first touchdown that Tua threw to Tyreek Hill. He's behind the entire defense. The Buffalo Bills had this fear, and maybe it was a Leslie Frazier thing, and maybe we're going to see something different from Sean McDermott this week. They've got this fear that, and I think they've even said it, well, if you step up and you press them and they beat you, then they're behind you. Well, I've got news for you. They're getting behind you anyway. So why not use the 5-yard chuck rule and throw their beat keisters on the ground? Like, disrupt the timing for Tua, at least to make him run around you. Do something. Because he's going to run by you anyway. I'm
on your side. When I say I get it, I'm saying I get that that's their identity and they don't do it. Do I agree with it? No. I'm more in your camp.
Mm-hmm.
The work. Okay, so that little comment from me got you all hot and excited. So can I continue?
Yes. I'll mute my microphone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you better mute that microphone. You're always talking over me, Joe.
Oh, whatever.
Look, they still have work to do on the running game. I mean, they still have a lot of. They're going to decide what they think is going to work best against a very good Dolphins front six, in my opinion. I mean, maybe not flashy guys so much, but very hardworking fellas up there.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to get cleaner on the run blocking. All right, no more missed assignments. Balance on your footwork, 6-inch steps, as I always say. They need to be really keen on this idea, and maybe part of the mental work. They need to start faster. I'm just, there's something about, if I look at the execution of a play in the first couple of drives of the game, the first couple of plays of both first drives, it doesn't look like there's a sense of urgency. Like there needs to be, on the very first series, we're going to have a minimum of 5 plays before we go out, or we are going to establish ourselves up front and run the plays that establish your identity. That's why I don't love those 2 play calls. Like, if you're going to have run action, just run the damn ball on 1st and 10 of the game. Just run it, right? Give your offensive line a chance to get nasty, to get dirty, to go after them. And I just don't like this kind of, for lack of a better expression, kind of pussyfooting around, dancing. I want to go at them, but that's an offensive lineman's attitude. And then when you do that, if you go straight at them, and I don't care if you go 1st and 10 for 1 yard, 2nd and 9 for 3, and just mash them. And on 3rd and 10, you'd be surprised how often play action will actually work, right? At 3rd and 7, even though your running game isn't going anywhere, because it's like a mental thing. Hey, we will run it and you will respect it. Oop, now it's a pass.
Right. Do you find some of that concern and that work that needs to be done in the offensive coordinator's hands?
Yeah, I think some of that has to come down from the HC too. I think McDermott kind of has to, they have performance reviews, I hope, just like, all of us do.
Well, McDermott was never shy about calling out Brian Dable, but he has never said a negative comment about Dorsey.
Well, I think maybe he's decided not to call people out, but he's certainly got to go back and evaluate. Like, you got to pick the first 6 drives of the game in a win and say, what was your thinking? What's the game plan? Are you sticking to the game plan?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you scripting plays? Okay. If you're going to script the first 10 plays, tell me why. Tell me what about the defense has you scripting these plays? We've got a decent offensive line. Why aren't you running the ball right at him? We got a rookie guard who's feeling confident, who wants to just plow people. We got a right tackle who's all attitude. Why aren't we trying to envelop these guys a little bit and push the line of scrimmage?
This offense, I've said it for years, functions better. And it's, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. This is an offense that can turn it on when they want to. Inside of 2 minutes, they turn it on. If it's inside 1 minute, they turn it on. They, from an up-tempo standpoint, and I don't mean no huddle. I'm not talking about the K gun.
I understand. No, I understand.
When they get into a kind of a muddle huddle, up-tempo, we're just going to go in rhythm, they have a tendency to do whatever they want to do straight down the field. It's when they do this whole, I don't even know what to call it. It's more of, to your point, it's just, there's no urgency. It's very herky-jerky. It's very, I sent you a text today of a tweet that somebody had posted about like what the yardage stuff was. I can probably pull it up and tell you who it was. Hang on.
Yeah, I know. I saw it. It
was not great. Right?
No, it was not great. And I understand what you're saying about this idea of a 2-minute sort of mentality.
Yeah.
So before the game, everybody's got to climb up and put like a piece of tape over where the 1 is, so the game starts, it's 5 minutes in every quarter.
Right. Jay Skursky from, I believe he's from Channel 2.
A big piece of tape.
He said the Bills ran 15 offensive plays on first down in the first half Sunday against Washington. Here's how many yards those plays produced. To your point, -1, -2, 11, 0, 0, 0. 35-yard touchdown to Gabe Davis. 2, 3, 2, 1, 9, 4, 0. Not great.
Let me address the philosophy behind the plays. I think if you went back and looked at it, I would say probably half of the unsuccessful plays were not forward moving plays. And that's my argument, right? A draw is all about gaps and openings, and they don't always work when defensive guys don't go where you hope they go. And then you've got the swing out there, and then you're running a receiver across the formation who's going parallel to the line. In the early part of a game, I want to go this way. I want to take my guy and I want to put him in the linebacker's lap. That's what gets offensive lineman juices running. And it's the OC saying, I believe in you guys. And it's not about, they're so much bigger. You know, the amount of strength and weight between this guy and that guy doesn't equate, right? It's not a mathematical equation.
Right.
You could take guys and just exert your will, cover them up, and then a guy like James Cook, all of our running backs, really. I mean, they're all pretty nice.
Really good.
As soon as you get into the line and you're locked up on a guy and the running back can only see your offensive line number, by the time he gets even with you, he's got 3 yards. If everybody's got a hat on a hat. But if you're running across the formation or you're throwing it out in space and you're expecting, the DB to fill outside or fill inside, and the receiver who's out there with them, to make a block like an offensive lineman, you're kind of whistling past the graveyard.
I got nothing for that one. That was good. Whistling past the graveyard. That was a good one.
I didn't invent it. You heard
I know you didn't, but it was good. So moving into a conversation about our next expectation. So the Miami Dolphins are headed into Buffalo, and I would say that I would prefer them to be here in the wintertime, but they hung 32 points on us last year in the snow. Well, what ended up being in the snow at the end of the game.
Right.
I'm not necessarily sure that they're afraid of the weather. So we'll just say that. So when you look at what's going to be coming into Buffalo, 70 points, there's an aspect of like, oh my God, right? At the same time, it's not realistic that a football team is going to score 70 points often. This is the first time it's happened in how long? It's been decades and decades and decades, right? Since the last time that it's actually happened. I don't find ourselves in a situation where the Buffalo Bills are going to lay down quite like the Denver Broncos did in that football game. But at the same time, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Tua have provided a measure of difficulty for the Buffalo Bills recently, right? Josh Allen has his way with that defense, generally speaking. Generally, Josh doesn't have a problem with that defense. However, offensively, this is going to be a boat race, right? So the question is how do you stop them? How do you slow them down? How do you what are you taking away? Or are you just manning up on them like the Bills typically do? Nickel 4-2, we're going to put our defense out there, let them play some football.
Well, the best thing you can do for the defense is get ahead by a touchdown, right? I mean, that's the best thing you can do is force them to play from behind. And going back to what I said earlier, Josh Allen is not a rookie quarterback. You don't need to take the first snap of the game and throw it out 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
we need to establish an attitude. And I always revert back to offense because of, my history, but I think you need to exert your will early on in the game and show a commitment to running the ball forward, right? And if you are going to have success, we need sustained drives, because I believe, if we can limit the amount of time that they have, we're going to be a lot better off. Get ahead and have 7 to 8 play drives every time.
Yeah.
Now, if you're asking specifically about defense, I think this is a huge week for the safeties, right? The corners are going to be absolutely running with their hair on fire. it's going to be all about what the safeties read and how they react. Now, I don't break down Miami's film, and I don't know their passing scheme, but I can tell you that the idea is to make a safety float one way and throw it the other way, right? You want to get them choosing and you hit the other guy.
Right.
So the reaction time of Poyer and Hyde and how well they're going to support the completions, which are going to happen, is really, I think, going to make or break the game. I don't think these, throws crossing over the middle in front of Taron Johnson or Bernard or Milano are really the big risk in this game. I think it's all about how the safeties come up and support on the outside.
Yeah. So it's weird to me to hear you say that the answer is to dictate on this game. Basically, limit possessions, hold the football, run it, keep the clock going, and limit Miami's possessions. Maybe that is the answer. I just don't like that kind of football.
No, I don't. I think you're misreading me. What I'm saying is play a version of football that's bigger, that's more aggressive in the run game. All right. So if you can press the front six, right?
Mm-hmm.
The running game going this way is going to exhaust the big guys a lot faster.
Gotcha.
If you can establish the run, a forward moving run game instead of, sweeps and reverses and jet sweeps and all that garbage.
Right.
And even, it's nice to throw the ball out there. It's like a modified run. But what you don't get out of that is you don't get the opportunity to exhaust the defensive tackles and defensive ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that in the end, it's a game of attrition, but it's also a game of gas. Like, how much gas do you have in the fourth quarter? And I promise you that if you can have a 100-yard rusher and you got a guy that's clipping off just 5 yards per carry and it's between the tackles, those defensive linemen at the end of the game, they can hardly lift their arms. Now, I'm still okay with play action and throwing it 42 yards down the field for a touchdown, but I don't like this, bringing in the slot guys and running all these cutesy run. Just run the ball. Just run it forward.
12, 13 personnel, just run.
I like it.
I don't not like it. I mean, it's the Dolphins don't. I mean, I'm not petrified, right? The Jets almost made me more nervous week one than the Dolphins are making me right now, and traditionally have made me, only because Josh Allen plays usually pretty well against the Dolphins. Like, he doesn't necessarily have a problem. Like, the Jets give Josh Allen a hard time. He has a difficult time playing that football team.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I think this is bet the over, right? The Bills right now, I think, are 2.5 point favorites. I don't know what the under over is, but if it's
I thought it was like 60.
I would say if it's less than 60, bet the over. It's going to be,
kidding.
I think it's going to be beautiful in Buffalo.
At the risk of interrupting you again, I will say Tua does get the ball out fast. And so defensively, you have got to really shrink your pass rush. I don't think there's a huge worry about him scrambling. He's a fair runner. I don't think that's really part of their weaponry like Josh Allen runs the ball. But you want to get into those throwing lanes and get your hands up.
But so much of what they do is predicated on the trust and the timing of the pattern. You've got to disrupt the routes.
No, I agree with that, but I'm also saying you don't want to be rushing from a 9 technique.
Oh, from wide, super wide, right?
Yeah, you want to be tighter to the tackles, and every now and again, depending on what they're doing, because they're going to hurt us.
For sure.
This is the game, right? Depending on where the ball's coming out and what their philosophy starts looking like after a quarter, you might have a guy, and I don't love it, but every now and again, you might have a guy just take 2 steps in, pound the tackle, and go up like he's going up for a rebound. I mean,
yeah, hands up. Tua's not tall. They need to obviously hit him a little bit. We're going to say,
right. And if you're not pressing on the outside, then you're not getting him to hold the ball. So a long rush around the top doesn't quite get there. So mix it up a little bit. Mix a little push and jump.
They've had success with Milano streaking through the middle of the line, right? So that's actually how he hit him last year, which the Dolphins fans feel.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah,
there's a lot of women on this podcast, and if you say Milano streaking again, we might get a call from the FCC.
I'm not going to go there. I'll just, yeah. John, this has been a fantastic show. This has been a fun conversation.
Thank you. I've enjoyed hosting you.
You do a great job. We're going to rename this to the No Tackle with Joe Miller show.
It's been fun. Look, there's a million ways to dissect a game. There's a million ways to game plan. Everybody is a little sphincter tight coming up for this week because Miami is good now. Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? Yeah. We don't think as much about New England anymore, but Miami is the New England of 7-8 years ago.
Right.
And you know what? I think it bodes well for the division. The higher the competition is for us, the longer we can get through it with W's and stay healthy. Hopefully, the better we do in the playoffs.
Super, super good. Were those your final thoughts? Because those were good final thoughts.
Well, then, yes. If I'm grading on a curve.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been tuned into the Off Tackle with John Fina show, brought to you by Ficta, Endel, and Elmer Eye Care on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. My name is Joe Miller. That's John Fina. Tomorrow? Code of Conduct, I think. There's a bunch of shows. Wednesday, Hump Day Hotline, Line to Gang. Got a lot of good stuff coming up this week for you. John, anything? Any final words? Anything?
Go Bills. I just, I'm getting excited right now. Go Bills.
Go Bills. We'll talk to you guys later. See you.